Assalamualaikum. Today's lecture is on nasopharyngeal angiofibroma as well as on the nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Before going further, I'll give you a brief description of nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Actually, nasopharyngeal fibroma is a histologically benign but locally aggressive vascular tumor of the nasopharynx that arises from the superior margin of the sphenopalatine foramen and grows in the back of the nasal cavity. And basically, it is a hormone sensitive tumor as it commonly affects the adolescent males. So it is a benign tumor, but it is a locally invasive and can invade the nose, cheek, orbit, or brain. And basically, it usually presents with a one-sided nasal obstruction and profuse epistaxis. And we can treat it surgically. This is a brief description of the nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Now, basically, one of the most important things is that it is the commonest of the benign tumors of the nasopharynx. Although its etiology is unknown, and it is, as I have already told you, that it is mostly seen in the young adults, now especially predominantly in the males, and it is thought to be testosterone dependent, as seen in males 10 to 24, 20 years of age. Cytopharism, there's a lot of controversy, but most of the people agree on that is basically arise from the closest superior margin of sphenopalatine foramen. And in the superior meatus, 1 centimeter behind posterior end of the middle turbinate. And underlying pathology is either because it is a highly vascular tumor, so it has composed of two components, vascular tissue as well as a fibrous tissue. Abnormal vessels lack, and it is a highly vascular. That's why it bleeds so profusely because it has got abnormal vessels as well as there's no muscular core and they are unable to contract. That's why whenever the most common presentation of the nasopharyngeal fibroma is epistaxis. The other thing is fibrous tissue. Ratio of two components varies, are fibrous as well as the vascular tissue, and the presenting symptoms of the patient would depend on the underlying pathology. Extension, of course, it is a highly extensive tumor and it can extend to any area which is close to its vicinity. Like it can go, anterior to the nasal. It can involve the nasal bone, and also if it goes laterally, then involves the ethmoid bones, ethmoid sinuses. It can also cross the clavicle and enter to the brain. And then it laterally, of course, it involves the orbit. Inferiorly, it involves very important areas, this infratemporal fossa, and so also it can, and the presentation would be the swelling of the cheek. And when it involves all these structures, basically it has got a severe type of facial deformity. And this is specifically called soft face. And because it involves different structures, that is nose, nasal sinuses, cheek, orbit, and the presentation would be very, enlargement of and disfigurement of the face. And it also, of course, involves the middle cranial fossa via the foramen lesser. And it involves the presentation would be, because it involves all the orbital nerves, that is third, oculomotor nerve, occasion, and all the nerves and anterior cranial fossa wire would become fixed. You can see with this picture that extension, and the presentation of the tumor would depend on the extension of the tumor. कहाँ से उनकी अब जाके देखो. Okay, the presentation of this tumor, because it is a benign but locally aggressive tumor, presentation would either because the involvement of the tumor of different parts, when it involves the nose, you can see there's a polypoidal mass can be seen in the nose and nasopharynx. although it is very little chances, but yes, this could be the presentation, or this is the if it involves the infratemporal fossa and the presentation would be this setting of the G. If it involves the orbit, then there would be the soft process. So again, it is usually seen in adolescent males around 10 to 20 years old, and most of the presentation is recurrent fluid epistaxis, and then when the blood CT of this patient will be done, then this will show the anemia. Nasal obstruction, of course, progressive denasal speech and conductive deafness, which is of course serious effects in the station 2 obstruction. And mass in the nasopharynx, sometimes yes, you can get globulated pinky color, firm consistency, obstructs the poema, and palpation should never ever be done in this patient. As you know, any presentation in the young male adults with the history of the epistaxis, then of course we need to rule out this in glioblastoma. And palpation never ever be advisable because it will bleed profusely, and we are not able to stop that epistaxis on OPD. So whenever the presentation would be like this, then we need to get a differential diagnosis. At signs which is textural tuberculosis, broadening of nasal bridge, frog face, swelling of teeth, cheek because of involvement of all these. What's the investigations? Of course, the ideal investigation would be CT scan. Because the rest of the radiological investigations are not suitable to get the diagnosis of this tumor. And CT scan is the gold standard, and it will show that antral sign. You should remember it by heart. That is the antral sign or Horman's Miller sign. What is this? It is the pathognomic for the tumor, and then basically whenever this anterior bowing of posterior wall of medullary sinus, this is called antral sign or Horman's Miller sign. This is pathognomic for this tumor. And then MRI, of course, because this will give the delineation of the bony destruction, while MRI will give the detailed explanation of your soft tissue extension. Carotid angiography, definitely it has got prophylactic as well as a diagnostic purposes because shows extension of tumor, tumor vascularity, including ulcers, and for embolization. This is very important before going to the surgical treatment of this tumor. You can see this is a very highly vascular pinkish type of tumor present in the nasopharynx. So, and what is Holman Muller sign? Muller sign basically this is anterior bowing of the this maxillary sinus, and this will show these arrows will show that it is anterior bowing, and this will also, of course, what would happen? That there is a deflection of the nose. And those extension nasopharynx pterygopalatine fossa and widening of the left sphenopalatine fossa. This is axial CT scan, widening of the right sphenopalatine foramen, and extension to you can see that there is a anterior bowing of posterior wall of right medullary sinus. This is called Holman-Miller sign. So this is one of the staging system that is called Redkowski's nasopharyngeal fibroma staging system. What is this? This we can divide it on the basis of A, B, C. 1A limited to the node of nasopharynx, 1B same as IV but with extension into one or more paranasal sinuses. 2A minimal extension to the sphenopalatine foramen into and including a minimal part of medial most part of the pterygomaxillary fossa. Full occupation of the pterygomaxillary fossa displacing the posterior wall of maxillary. Whenever it involves the maxillary and come forward, then it is 2B. Because this classification is important for the treatment of the patient, which route we will use later on for the treating this tumor. So 1, 2, 3 extension to the pterygomaxillary fossa into 3 and temporal fossa posterior to pterygoid plate. 3A erosion of the skull base, minimal intracranial extension. And 3B erosion of skull base, extensive intracranial extension with or without cavernous time. Diagnosis, of course, basically diagnosis is clinical. When you need to take full history, clinical examination, or ENT examination, thorough ENT examination, radiography, plain X-rays will not give much information, but carotid angiography, CT scan, biopsy is essential to differentiate from other tumors done in OT with all arrangements. The treatment is basically the surgical treatment is the ideal choice of treatment for angiofibroma, and this approach basically depends upon its extension of the tumor in different areas, parts of the head and neck. The common present this is transpalatine approach. Basically, nowadays we are doing endoscopic surgery, and either they will go for this. These are different routes of the entering into and for the treating this tumor. Transpalatine is a subclavius Sadhana's approach, and transmaxillary when it is this is Leafold's one approach when it involves the maxillary sinus, extended lateral rhinotomy, and these are the Denker approach and other external intracerebral whenever it involves the brain. And these two basically are used when it involves the infratemporal fossa, maxillary pressure. These are different, approaches. And pre-op reduction of vascularity should be done with the help of embolization by doing this carotid angiography, and other treatments would be sometimes helpful like radiotherapy, hormonal chemotherapy, but these are all involved in the regression of the tumor just to reduce the size of the tumor, reduce the vascularity, and also these three treatments are used for if the because recurrence is very common in this tumor. So these treatments would be used in when the tumor is recurrent. Pre-op embolization is very important, very useful. 24 to 72 hours before pre-operative. And gel form, what we use basically gel form, polyvinyl alcohol form. These are an efficacy stage one patient use rounds from 840 cc to 275 cc. Just you can imagine how much blood loss can be reduced by doing this pre-op embolization. And yes, complications can occur like pain and ophthalmic artery embolization, facial nerve palsy, skin and soft tissue. You can appreciate that these are the embolization, pre-op embolization. If before that you can see a lot of blood over here, and after embolization you can appreciate that how much blood loss can be reduced during pre-op. These are some of the pictures of your approaches. These are transpalatal, and we are doing these surgeries with the help of endoscopes. And you can see these are transpalatal. This mid-facial gloving. In this case, almost half of the face can be degloved. And this is a mid-facial degloving with maxillary osteotomies, giving buccal NCN and nasal intercartilage NCN with transfixation incisions. Maxillectomy, yes, this is one of the approach we can do when the tumor is extended to the sinuses, maxillary as well as the ethmoid sinuses. And in this case, we will do definitely maxillary osteotomy and sagittal osteotomy. You can see we need to divide it and then remove the whole tumor after doing this approach. This is a Denker approach. This is a very in those cases where the tumor is extended in a lot of areas, and in this case, wide anterior you need to divide it whole and removal of ascending process of maxilla and also inferior half of the lateral nasal wall. And then you can, due to this approach, you are able to remove all tumors. This is the normal endoscopic transnasal approach. You can see middle nasal enterostomy and section of the posterior wall. Infratemporal fossa with or without craniotomy. This approach is for highly extended tumors. These are very important because you need to differentiate whenever the young boy is presenting with epistaxis, you need to different. The foremost diagnosis should be in your mind is angiofibroma, but you need to differentiate it from other tumors. That is, Nessel is first of all very common intracorneal polyp. It is very common in the young children, especially in the boys. Adenoids, nasopharyngeal angiofibroma, squamous cell carcinoma, lymphomas, lymphocytic gliomas, and lymphocytomas, chondromas, and chordomas. and nasopharyngeal post-pituitary atrophic pituitary carcinomas, mulberry hypertrophy of post and of inferior turbinate, acute retropharyngeal abscess in nasopharynx, and Thorwald's disease, nasopharyngeal ascites. Now coming to the other tumor, that is nasopharyngeal carcinoma. This is again, for this nasopharyngeal carcinoma is quite not very common in Europe or in Asia, but especially it is foremost common in the case of Chinese. And in Chinese, they have the higher genetic susceptibility. Either they are, of course, it is more common in those Chinese, those who are resident in China. But this genetic susceptibility, they can continue in other countries, but of course, the incidence would be less. Etiology is still not known, but a lot of people agree upon that there might be some viral origin, that Epstein-Barr virus plays a very important role in this. And sometimes, environmental factors also affect, like air pollution, tobacco, and nitrosamines from dry salted fish along with decreased vitamin C diet, smoke, burning incidences, and growth and polychronic polycyclic hydrocarbons. Those patients, those people who are very, conscious about it, that this tumor should not occur in those in them, so they need to avoid all these smoke burning and salted fish, things that, and also try to, they can get, check their antibodies or continuous checking the incidence of Epstein-Barr virus in their nasopharynx. So pathology, most common tumor is squamous cell carcinoma, almost 85% it is squamous cell carcinoma. And lymphomas, 10% cases, and leptomyosarcomas and mixed lymphomas, malignant choroidomas, almost 15%. And the WHO latest classification based on histopathology is type 1, 25% squamous cell carcinoma, type 2, 12% non-keratinizing carcinoma, that is without lymphoid stroma, with lymphoid stroma, and type 3, 63% undifferentiated carcinoma without lymphoid stroma and with lymphoid stroma. These are the classifications, and these are the basically depend based on the histopathology. Grossly, of course, as angiofibroma, just like angioma, this tumor also presents in three forms. Um, no, basically the extension of these tumors can occur in all the adjoining areas, just like angiofibroma. But as we know that angiofibroma is a benign tumor, while the nasopharyngeal carcinoma is of course the malignant tumor, which has got grossly we can differentiate it into two types. That is proliferative, ulcerative, and infiltrative. Proliferative means whenever the presentation would be polypoid tumor causing obstructive symptoms. The most common symptom would be the patient would present with the nasal obstruction. In this case, ulcerative, of course, definitely. Whenever the ulcerative form occurs, then it's got a lot of epistaxis, and infiltrative infiltrates submucous. So fossa of the most common site of occurrence is fossa of Rosenmuller, and in the lateral wall of the nose. Clinical features include clinical features age 50 to 70 years, and mostly it is again present more common in the males, but the incidence is present in females as well. And the presentation would be nasal obstruction, nasal discharge, and hyponasal speech, epistaxis, and otological symptoms as conductive. Any patient, yeah, adult patient who presents with the unilateral conductive blindness along with the cerebrospinal media, then you need to rule out the nasopharyngeal carcinoma in this patient. And all these symptoms occur due to station tube obstruction. Ophthalmological symptoms due to spread of tumor in the, of course, in the sixth, and it involves different nerves. There is sixth, third, fourth, sixth nerve. And this will cause diplopia, ophthalmoplegia, spatial pain, and decreased corneal reflex. This is again pathognomonic in the case of nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Exophthalmos and blindness. And jugular foramen syndrome, this of course involved because it's in the jugular foramen, all the nerves at 9, 10, 11 nerves, they are passing through the jugular foramen, and this syndrome will occur when this tumor can extend into the jugular foramen. Hypoglossal canal, of course, the presentation would be anything in the talking because it involves the 12th nerve. Horner syndrome, cervical sympathetic change involved. So this is very important. Trotters try it. It can come in your SAQ as well as in, you can ask in your YWAS that what is Trotters triad. This is very pathognomic for the nasopharyngeal carcinoma. That is conductive test. It includes three Trotters triad. Conductive test means eustachian tube blockade and severe hepatitis media. Ipsilateral palatal paralysis, this invasion of 10th nerve. And ipsilateral temporoparietal neuralgia, that is fifth nerve via foramen magnum. This triad is very important for the diagnosing nasopharyngeal carcinoma. So again, one of the common presentation is if it involves because this lymphatic it involves lymphatics quickly, and the sometimes that presentation would be only your cervical lymph node metastasis and your lump in the neck. Maybe on, and normally lump is present between the angle of jaw and mesial. That is upper tubular or tubulo-digastric nodes along spinal accessory nerve and post triangle of the neck. Distinct metastasis, bone, lung, and liver. And what is Atrial triangle or supraclavicular fossa? Metastasis in the triangle would place in nasopharyngeal carcinoma in N3 category, irrespective of their size. This is basically this. You can see that the extension of the how this spread of this in nasopharyngeal carcinoma can occur. You can see that it can easily go into the cervical node, upper jugular and posterior triangle nodes enlargement, gestation tube. Then of course the presentation is serous media, nasal obstruction, epistaxis involves the nose in orbit. And distal metastasis can occur into lung, liver, and bones. Of course, these are the cranial nerve fallacies and pterygoid muscles, neck pain, and stiffness. This supraclavicular fossa or AHS triangle you can see is bounded by medial and lateral ends of clavicle and the point. The neck meets the shoulder includes caudal portion of level 4 and 6. And this will include in the category. This is a TNM classification, that is tumors and TNM classification is essentially carcinoma. Um, and the primary tumor T1 basically tumors are confined to nasopharynx, T2 tumor extends to soft tissue of oropharynx or nasal fossa, T2A without parapharyngeal extension, T2B with parapharyngeal extension, T3 tumor invades bony structures and paranasal sinuses, and T4 tumor with intracranial extension, involvement of cranial nerves, infratemporal fossa, hypopharynx, and all. You should, of course, you should have a little bit idea regarding this TNM classification. At least you can, because this classification is important for the treatment of the tumor. That is regional lymph nodes, and then that is then distribution either NX, regional lymph node cannot be assessed, M0, no regional lymph node metastasis occurs, N1, unilateral metastasis in lymph node 6 centimeter or less in greater dimension above the supraclavicular fossa. N2, bilateral metastasis in lymph node 6 centimeter or less in greater dimension above the supraclavicular fossa. N3, whenever the N3 comes, then it means the metastasis in the lymph nodes. N3A greater than 6 centimeter in dimension, N3B in the supraclavicular fossa. Distant metastasis, we can divide it only three. MX, distant metastasis cannot be assessed. M, no distant metastasis. M0, M1, either distant metastasis. There is no further grading of this metastasis occur in this tumor. Those are presenting signs, of course, you can see that the most presentation, common presentation would be 60 to 90% cervical hepatitis. So whenever the presentation in young patients would occur, not in young, it may occur after 30 or 40 years. So you need to differentiate it with the tuberculosis, because in tuberculosis the presentation would be cervical lymphadenopathy. So deafness, of course. We, we have some problem with the network over here. So Basically, we have just come to the radiological investigations of the nasopharyngeal carcinoma. So, what tests which are necessary to diagnose this nasopharyngeal carcinoma? Basically, nasoendoscopy. We and this can be done in the OPD with easily, with the bypassing the flexible endoscope, and we can easily examine the nose, throat, nasopharynx clearly with the help of nasoendoscope. Then we will go for radiological investigations like CT scan, MRI. CT scan is again will give a lot of information regarding bony involvement of the tumor, its extension, and the MRI is of course involvement of the soft tissue involvement. And then one important thing we will do in this carcinoma is pan endoscopy. Pan endoscopy means we need to do the endoscopy in different areas. First we need to do it from the nose, and then we need to pass this endoscope and see the whole area of the nasopharynx, and as well as this will go into the piriform fossa, and also we will take biopsies from the larynx. And these areas, because we are examining different areas with the help of nasal endoscope, so it is called pan endoscopy. And this pan endoscopy will, of course, give us information regarding the extent of the tumor, as well as regarding the involvement of different areas and the shape, either it is ulcerative, proliferative, or infiltrative type of the tumor. And exact location of the tumor also can be easily get with the help of pan endoscopy. And the most important function of the pan endoscopy is that we can take biopsy from these areas. So now the other question is how nasopharyngeal carcinoma is treated. Basically, there are two main sets of treatment for nasopharyngeal carcinomas are radiotherapy as well as the chemotherapy. Radiotherapy, because of course we need to use radiotherapy to kill the cancer cells, and in most cases a combination of radiotherapy and chemotherapy will be used. Surgery is not usually used to treat nasopharyngeal carcinoma because it is difficult for a surgeon for us to assess the affected area. So, what type of radiotherapy is used in the treatment of the nasopharyngeal carcinoma? Radiotherapy is the most commonly used and can be used either very early to treat very early stage carcinomas or in combination with the chemotherapy for more advanced cancers. In most cases, external radiotherapy is used, and it involves, in this case, high energy radiation beam on the involved area is used, which needs treatment. In nasopharyngeal carcinoma, an advanced form of external radiotherapy called intensity modulated radiation therapy is also used. And basically, what is the underlying function of this radiotherapy? The underlying function that which helps to maximize the dose, maximize the delivery to the tumor while minimizing the effects on the surrounding healthy area. So we are not basically affecting the healthy areas. We are only treating the tumorous areas. And one of the radiation, that is stereotactic radiotherapy nowadays, is another way of giving radiotherapy externally and may be used to target a specific area where the tumor is present. And external radiotherapy is often given in short sessions once a day, and this is usually carried out for 7 weeks, and of course it means that there are not much long hospital stay is needed in this case. And then the other thing is chemotherapy. And chemotherapy, either it should be used before or alongside radiotherapy for more advanced nasopharyngeal carcinomas. And of course, we need to give them in different sessions for 3 to 4 weeks. And basically, some of the side effects can occur with these radiotherapy and chemotherapy, like diarrhea, sore mouth, tiredness, weakness. These are the symptoms which are, which will get after radiotherapy and chemotherapy. And what else? Because this is follow-up is needed for this tumor. Basically, regular follow-ups and appointments should be needed to monitor the recovery and also the recurrence, to check the recurrence of the carcinoma. So this follow-up is needed in this case. And if you want to ask any question, you can ask regarding these nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and as well as you can write it down in the your chat box. Table over here.